It's wrong to tell another person that they're a mistake. A parent may think that their child a mistake when that child was conceived without their consent. And a lot of people believe that some other people were created as mistakes or
Just
happy little
dang
accidents,
accidents.
as if they're lines of badly written codes in a buggy program. I think people are committing an error when they try to make a distinction between what makes someone a real mistake and what doesn't. If you are willing to do a quick mental exercise with me, you too will also come to the conclusion that such a distinction doesn't exist, and that in many ways, we're all mistakes of nature. How is this possible, you might ask? It seems so obvious that some people were created with a purpose, while others are not. Some people wake up in the morning, know exactly what they're going to do, and act with intent and perfect clarity. Others feel adrift in life and just meander along, not really knowing why it is that they exist. There are a few reasons that lead me to believe that all life is a mistake. The first reason is because no being ever willed themselves into existence. In other words, we were all given life even though we never gave our consent. It doesn't matter whether God exists or whether God has a blueprint for each individual soul that He has created. A godless world is a world that goes into existence, decides everything sucks, then dies. That's the core essence of nihilism right there. Since life has no meaning, we all have to come up with our own reason for living. Because the process of finding meaning is so subjective, you can argue that objective, true meaning doesn't exist. If objective meaning to existence doesn't exist, would it be wrong to conclude that existence itself is a mistake? The second reason all life forms are mistakes is simply because they're all deeply flawed. All life forms are in their truest essence imperfect, because all life forms are finite. If you're a finite, localized being, you exist in a larger system, and that means there exists a better version of yourself somewhere out there. If this idealized self doesn't exist in actuality, it exists in the realm of concept, a potential and idea that you can always do better, even when you don't know how to do so. You're constantly changing every day, and you might be able to become better versions of yourself as the years come by. But that won't change the fact that perfection is an attribute that cannot be found anywhere in the universe. And since we'll always be imperfections, no matter what form we assume, it could only mean we were created by mistake. Now that I've given some arguments as to why we're all failed abortions of nature, I'm going to contradict myself and tell you that we're not mistakes. Although we're infinitely flawed from the human perspective, we're also perfection in the eyes of God, or nature. The reason why we'll always be perfect in the eyes of God is because in the pantheistic worldview, God is the world. And I know a lot of you are against pantheism, but this philosophy is really useful because it gives us the answer to our very own history and how we came into existence in the first place. And our origin story is extremely basic, believe it or not. We can figure out how we came to be simply by going back to the classical definition of God itself. How do most of us define God? God is omnipotent. It can do absolutely anything. If God can do anything, then it can create absolutely anything. If it is capable of creating anything, then everything is part of its creation. You can't say that God can only create some things and not create other things, because that argument implies creation is something that is outside of God. How can there be anything outside of God if it is omnipotent? If God is omnipotent, it can also do anything and become anything. If God can be anything, it can also be everything. The everything is also something you sometimes refer to as existence, nature, and reality. And here's our origin story. Since God is omnipotent, not only can it be everything, it can also become something that is not everything, meaning something that is finite and separated from the world. Let me say it again. Not only can God embody everything, it can also become something that is not everything, something finite, imperfect, and flawed. And that's us. Every particle, every cell, every atom, every piece of dirt on the floor, every drop of blood in your body, every piece of hair on your skin. Every single thing that is finite is not only a product of God's infinite creation, but also a demonstration of its omnipotence. In other words, your very existence is a testament to and celebration of God's absolute perfection. You are a proof that God can do the impossible, that God can become something that is beyond absolute infinity and the everythingness itself. God can become finite, and that's how we came into being. Although we have a beginning, our starting point is also infinitely far away from where we are now in time. Just like how the universe doesn't have a starting point, and goes through the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Our localized consciousness is also the same, changing from one form to the next until the end of time. But since we don't remember anything, it doesn't make a difference whether we only have one, multiple, or an infinite number of reincarnations. It's kind of like losing your memory. Whenever you forget everything, you're technically being reborn again for the first time. Yes, I'm suggesting that you may have lived for billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of years, an eternity. But as long as you don't remember anything, there's literally no difference whether you only live once or whether you've been around since the beginning of time, which doesn't exist. Unfortunately, I can't prove any of the things I say to you. What? Will you be more inclined to believe in the existence of God if I start flying and shooting laser beams out of my eye sockets? Seems like parlor tricks to me. Any kind of proof is a finite object. How can anything finite prove the existence of the absolute infinity? It's like saying how we can use knowledge and intellect to define reality, as if there's something that are beyond existence, even though it should be the other way around. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt, and even if you don't agree with my TED Talk, I hope at least the video still gives you some interesting ideas to think about. So whenever you have a rough day, or when things just look like they're going to keep getting worse, just remember that everything is a mistake. You, me, everything. We're all happy little accidents. At the same time, I want to remind you that no matter what form you take or what role you play in the world, or even when it seems like the whole universe denies your existence, you'll always be infinitely perfect in the eyes of God. That even if you're hated by existence itself, God will always love you.